DaVinci Resolve 17 has come out and there are a lot of new and exciting features, especially for colorists and for Fairlight, some improvements in the cut page. But I'm gonna look, of course, into Fusion in this tutorial. And in Fusion, many have hoped for more like incremental changes and stability improvements. And I think Blackmagic Design was listening. But there are some new features as well, which are in some cases incremental upgrades, but quite important ones. We do have now audio waveforms, very important of course. There are some UI improvements. We have some better handling for Fusion effects from the edit page. We have new shape tools and a new modifier, which I already tested quite a lot and find quite useful. And there are some more Resolve FX, which are now available inside of Fusion. So in this tutorial, I want to have a good look at all of them. This tutorial is for people who have used Fusion before. So if you are completely at the beginning, I would like to send you to my website instead, where you find a free beginner course for Fusion. You can do it with 16 or 17, doesn't matter. But if you are already familiar with Fusion, want to find out about the new features and how to use them, let's dive in. Let me start with the waveforms in Fusion. In the edit page, I have at the moment just 2 tracks, and whatever many tracks you have, the combined bus output should go over into Fusion to give you one audio signal and one waveform. So let me go over into Fusion and show you how that looks like and sounds like. So first of all, if I play back, I can actually hear it. My headphones here are playing it, and I might just turn down the volume so it's not interfering with the recording. And let me also show it to you. You see them here, and they are being cached, same like the images are being cached in Fusion. They're being cached to RAM as you play through the timeline. They're being controlled via the media in node. So in the media in node, I have here an audio tab, which is a new tab, and here I have a choice, so I could turn them completely off if I don't need audio tracks, or by default I have the timeline audio from the timeline. So if you need to mute it, by the way, you can click here, but then I think they won't update at the moment, at least. So if I purge and it's muted, you see they're not being cached, but if I unmute, the caching starts. So keep that in mind. You may need to play once through after you unmute if you have purged anything. So right now I have the full audio track. Let's assume I need to isolate certain elements, or I have certain elements that I want to animate to. Maybe I don't need all the audio. I can just go back into the edit page and solo a track or mute a track. Let me demonstrate and mute the first audio track. So this one is now muted. If I go back to Fusion, then because the caching is there, everything is still here. So the full audio waveform is still there, but then that's a scenario where I need to purge the cache, and now the beginning won't build up again because that part was muted, and then as it caches through, it will find again the audio waveforms. This is of course great because I can animate 2 audio waveforms, and let's just do a very quick example. Let's say I want to animate a brightness and contrast, maybe to the sound of the music, give some addition to the light effects or something, could have some interactive effects, something like this. But, I'll just make it super simple. Let's say I want to do some, let's just desaturate. I put a keyframe here, and I'll just put a second one after the waveform, and I say as the music builds up and becomes lower again, I want to follow this waveform with a visual cue. So I will have the saturation here, and in the middle I want to bring it to black and white. So if I bring it into the viewer, now I have this waveform here. Here, of course, I have a bit limited control compared to the spline editor. Usually I would do such animations directly in the spline editor, but in the spline editor I do not see the waveforms. So that's why you may be using a bit more the keyframe editor than before, just to place those keyframes. And of course you can still go into the spline editor afterwards, but you can also, you have more controls in here if you're not familiar, so you don't see a lot of buttons here to control your keyframes, but the keyboard shortcuts that work in other areas of the applications also work here. So if I want to smooth this, for example, I can press Shift S, or to flatten you have Shift F, and or you can right click on a keyframe and you see here flat, smooth, linear. So you have these kind of minimal controls at least. Right, so you can smoothen something and then move it around. So you have this level of control, but then of course if you want more, then you go for the same into the spline editor where you have your spline handles and everything. So now I have a saturation effect which goes with the music. You can probably do something more creative, but just to show you some ideas about the keyframing. At the moment I can only do this manually here. There's no automatic tracing of the waveform, anything like this. Would be a cool feature for the future, but at the moment there's nothing like this in the default setup here. So you can just look at the waveform, listen to it, and time your animations manually. Since I'm here, let me talk also a bit about the markers. So that's also quite useful. So now you can set markers either in Fusion, see them in the edit, or vice versa. So you can just right click here and add a marker, and I should see it here as well in the spline editor as well. And in either place I can also edit them. So you can right click on them and see the marker list, or Shift G. So you can leave notes, whatever it is. I think you cannot change the color here in Fusion. They always seem to be blue. I'm not aware at least that I can change it, but at least I can place them, and those Fusion markers you can also see then in the edit page. So if I go into the edit page, I can find them here. There still seem to be a few things which are not possible. I don't seem to have duration markers in Fusion, and some of the other annotation features of the edit page. But at least this should be good enough to put yourself some reminders during editing or during compositing where you want to work on, and go back and forth to Fusion. For collaboration, of course, very good, but even if it's just you and yourself, I like to sometimes put myself some reminders somewhere, and now you have it with accurate timing, either on the timeline or on the effect. So I can also put something on the clip itself, and let me also make this a duration marker. So in the edit, by Alt or Option clicking and dragging, you have duration markers. And even though I cannot edit the duration in Fusion at the moment, it seems maybe that's still a better issue or something not implemented, but at least I can see them, and here I can also see them on the media clip, like in the keyframe editor on the clip itself, as well as on the timeline. Okay, so these markers I think are just a tiny little bonus we got. There are a few more improvements to the UI which don't really impact the compositing itself, but let me quickly show you. So another one is that you can now bookmark the flow. So that's maybe nice. So you can here add a bookmark even with the keyboard shortcut Control D. And let me just add it. And if your flow becomes a huge monster, which it can sometimes get, let me just do something just to make this a bit bigger, and I set a bookmark here, add bookmark, and all these bookmarks do is control your navigation. So when you're somewhere lost, you can then go back to your bookmark, and the flow moves back to the area that you have bookmarked. Underlays are being bookmarked by default, so if you're using underlays, that will navigate you very quickly. I think this is a nice feature, but probably depends on how you're working, if that really makes a lot of sense. So for me, I am also used to using this preview, and if my flow is very nicely organized, which of course it isn't always, but yeah, then I can also recognize the chunks of stuff just on the preview window, but one more option doesn't hurt. Since I'm talking about UI enhancements, another thing you can do now is customize your toolbar. Actually, you were able to do that even before that was possible in Resolve 16 and Fusion Studio 16, but you had to go into a config file and do some text modifications. Now it's possible via the menu, which is of course better for most people. So here you have the default toolbar, and I can now customize it by creating my own. So I create my own toolbar. The existing one automatically gets copied into the new one. So this is now the test toolbar, and you can now, for example, delete some stuff. Let's say I don't need particles. I can right click, customize, remove the particle group, and all the particle tools just vanished, or remove individual ones as well. And let's say instead I go to the effects library, and let's say I want some of these new tools. There are these shape tools, for example. Let's say I want them. So I can add some of those. Let's say we take a rectangle, and I will discuss those tools a bit later. So also get a merge and a render node as render. So now I have 3 nodes. Unfortunately, they all have the same symbol. So I would think something wasn't very well thought through here with the symbols. I hope they are still adding some symbols here, because in this bar it's obviously useful. Nonetheless, I can have them here. I can have a divider. I can move the tools around, and now if I hover over them, I can still see what it is, of course, even though right now the symbol for these tools was maybe not the most elegant one here. So anytime you can move back to a different toolbar, you could have multiple, could switch. So personally, I am so much used to the control spacebar and getting the tools from there that I will probably not spend too much time on customizing this, but for some people this will be very nice. Before I come to these new tools, maybe one last UI aspect, so just that we have it covered. You have now some additional settings for the UI layouts. So here are layout presets, and this is, I think, what was there before, but if you have a dual screen, so if you want to work on 2 screens, let me turn that on. And now my interface changed. I rarely do that because I'm recording tutorials. I usually have 1 screen, and then the second one I just use as an additional viewer output. But now I have 2 screens used for Fusion, and I show you the default layout. So if I take the second screen right now, it shows me the keyframes and the spline and the tools, the effects library here. And this way I have a bit more space and it's spread out. And you have a few presets here which you can go through and see if you like another one more. For example, there's big nodes, which if I select this, gives me a big node viewer on one screen and then the viewers on the other. So just some presets you can explore when you are using 2 screens. I switch back to 1 screen so that you can see everything. Now I want to show you some changes about the effects library and the edit effects, especially when it comes to macros and templates. You have probably already seen that the effects library here looks a bit different. We now have these preview images wherever they are set up. Now this is, I find this a little bit sad. On the one hand, this is now aligned with the way the effects library looks like on the edit page and on the color page, but actually there used to be a better solution in Fusion Studio where in the bins folder there used to be preview pictures actually of the effects, which were just bitmap pictures. So even for custom effects you could create your own and install it and so on. And here it's just this small icon which is saying a bit less, especially if it looks like this. Nonetheless, it is what it is. The idea of this layout is probably not really coming from Fusion, because here you can't really do anything except what you could always do, which is place the node into the flow. Now on the edit page, this same effects menu does make sense. If I open it here, it's kind of similar, except that I have now the edit effects as well. But here I have previews now. So these bigger bars and icons you can use to actually preview the transitions, for example. You can see how they look like, or the titles especially. And in the titles, they really have done some good work. Previously, I felt that the titles were more playful and showing functionality, but not really elegant. And now you see, first of all, you can preview the titles, and they are quite more useful titles and less like 90s style, let's impress everyone with 3D titles. So I think there's still some funny ones here, but all in all, they look much more useful to me now. And of course you can add your own and can buy packs for new titles and so on and create your Fusion titles. The titles were there, of course, before in 16. The transitions came in a recent 16 release. They weren't there in the beginning, but Fusion transitions were added, and now there are even more. Let me come back to the transitions in a minute, but first let me show you also the effects. So there's now an effects category. You could do previously Fusion effects, but you kind of had to throw them in the titles folder because there wasn't a custom folder for this. You still cannot customize these folders in the edit page. I already tried, but you're kind of stuck with those on the edit page. In Fusion you can create your own template folders, but here it seems to be limited for whatever reason, but you have now effects which you can directly apply on a clip. So for this Fusion effects here, for example this one, you can preview it and it's being previewed on your timeline, of course, and then you can drag it onto the clip and it's being immediately applied. And that works in a way, you see here some new updates in the inspector. You have a separate effects section, so you have your edit effects on the video tab, like the edit transforms, but then for Fusion effects and OpenFX and audio, you have this effects tab, and you can add them here, delete them, rearrange them. So you can basically layer effects now. You can have multiple Fusion effects and you can layer them like in layer-based editing, which is of course very easy for editors, but the effect itself is still a Fusion effect, which you can then of course still edit in Fusion if you still need the full node-based framework. So here let me demonstrate. So I have the binoculars here, which you can customize, and you can have, I don't know, a frame border or whatever else you want, something else, and can just add it to the current clip, and you will just layer them here and then can arrange them and so on. Let me delete this one again. So let me now show you how you can customize such an effect, change it, create your own. The principles here are, from a Fusion side, not really new. It's more like this new integration here in the edit page that has advanced this a little bit and made it more useful. So for these binoculars now, let's say I want to change this effect. I can go here to Fusion directly for this particular effect. And I assume that this is the intention if you need to do more enhanced customization. You do have here the edit controls. However, for reasons which are beyond me, I can't change anything here now. And I assume that this is a bug with the beta version, because quite frankly, this doesn't make any sense that I cannot do anything here. So I think that's a bug. I hope that's being fixed. But in the meantime, I can manage these effects the same way I can manage any macros in Fusion. Let me go back to the edit, and I will now just go, for a second, let me delete this again, and I will just go to Fusion on the clip or on any Fusion composition anywhere where I can actually work. So there, unfortunately, directly in the effect, at the moment it doesn't seem to work, but here on the regular clip level I can of course work, and I find all my edit templates here as well, so the transitions and so on, and in this case the effects. Let me bring in the binoculars just here, and here you can of course work, and you can change everything, have the on-screen viewers. In case of macros, nothing really has changed. If you're new to macros, I have recorded a tutorial on this before, but let me just very quickly show you. So this is a macro which doesn't expand, so you cannot go inside of it to make any significant changes beyond the interface control, but that can be very easily fixed. So in this case, you can copy the macro, just Control-C for copy. Then you need any form of text editor, and in my case I have Notepad++, which also for me does this coding, layout and coloring, but any text editor, Notepad or whatever, anything which just handles text and no other formatting will be fine. You just change the word macro here to group, and you can ignore everything else if you don't want to go into more detail about scripting and so on. You can do much more here, but if you only need to manipulate some existing elements, I show you just this trick. So you change group to macro, copy everything, Control C and paste it back. And now I have changed my macro into a group, and a group can be opened and can be edited. So just a simple trick. It's not really new, it has always been there. These macros have always been there. So again, I do have a separate macro tutorial from Resolve 16, still the same. I can now, let's do some minor change. For example, I changed this ellipse here to a rectangle, and this way I now have rectangular binoculars here. Let's, oh, I didn't update the viewer control, but you know, now I have a rectangle here. Let's attach it twice and make it a bit smaller. So now I have a rectangular for whatever it's worth. And now I will save this again, and you can either copy it into a text file, save it as a .settings file. You can again create a macro here. Well, you have to select all the nodes, and then you can create a new macro via create macro, or in case of a group, you can also right click and save the settings, save as, and that works as well. So anyway you save this into a .settings file, it will work as a macro again. Let me check where I need to save this, and now if you wanted to go here into the edit effects, you can just check where they are by clicking up here, show folder. And the folder will come up in Fusion. This show folder isn't there from the edit page, so I think they don't want editors to mess with these effects, but as Fusion artists from Fusion, you find the folder here. And let me just copy this, and now I right click and save this. So settings, save as. I save this group, and I'll save it into that folder that I just found for the effects here. And let's call this binoculars underscore rectangle for my super great 10-second effect here. Now, unfortunately, this effects library doesn't update automatically, so I do have to restart Resolve once in order to see it. I haven't seen any refresh button or anything to just immediately see the macro. In Fusion Studio, it used to be instant, but here it's not, so I have to restart Resolve. And I have restarted, and now I have my own effect here, and I can preview it like any other effect and can attach it here, throw it in the same way I had the original effect. And of course you can build your own effects from scratch and so on. Anything that you could do before with macros in Fusion, you can now, if it can be applied in this way to the whole clip, just something that goes basically between media in and media out, you can publish it here to the edit page and can directly drag and drop it and layer it in this way. So I think this is a very good combination of simple edit effects, simple layering, things that people who haven't learned Fusion can easily understand, but at the same time you have the full power of Fusion in the background. So that's really a good methodology, I believe. Now, again, macros aren't new. I've done tutorials on this. You find others out there. But what is new is that you have another modifier now, which relates to the length of the clips in DaVinci Resolve. And this can be very helpful for making these kind of custom and reusable effects. And this is the Anim Curves modifier. Let me show you this. And maybe to demonstrate one more thing here from the edit page, let me create a custom transition. And I will just put I have here cross dissolve. This is a normal edit dissolve transition. And actually, let me go to another clip where we don't have any other Fusion effects. So let me just put a cross dissolve here, so simple edit effect, nothing to do with Fusion. Now you can easily convert this to a Fusion transition, and this should work with all the edit effects. So either you can start with a Fusion transition, or you start with an edit transition and just here go on convert. And this way my transition here becomes a Fusion transition. You see it here, and here I have again this go to Fusion icon, and this time I believe I can edit it unless I'm again facing something which I believe to be bugs, but I think not. So here I think I can, yeah, so here I can now do actually edits. Don't know why it didn't work in the previous example. It should work here it actually does. Let me build something quick and dirty from scratch, and I also take it as an opportunity to use both this modifier, the new anim curves modifier, but also the new shape tools. So let me show you those. So under effects, shape, you find now a new set of tools, and this is basically a new methodology for using vector tools. When I first saw it, I wondered why did they do this rather than enhancing the polygon tool. So up till now, the polygon tools like the rectangle, ellipse, polygon, B-spline, they were the only tools which were vector tools in Fusion. But here's this thing. Let's say you want to paint with polygon tools. So let's say you take a rectangle and you can attach it to a background node to get a, let's say, a black box, and I can, you know, merge in a second background node and maybe put an ellipse mask on it and change the color, whatever. So this way you can, of course, also with custom polygons and so on, you can assemble some graphics. The problem with this approach is that every single element here is an RGB image with certain image dimensions, and your merge node and all processing on this happens basically on full frame RGB image processing, which is of course not super efficient. Now you do have the paint node, but this is vector-based, but again it has some limitations, and it's all in one node with modifiers and so on, which isn't always easy to handle. So now with these vector tools, things look a little bit different. They work in the same way like particles or 3D tools work, in the sense that you have generator nodes, you have merge nodes, and you have a render node, and all the processing happens based on the render node. So here we have a node called sRender. Let's start from the back, and I can attach anything like, let's say, I can attach a, let's take a star, for example, a star which is by itself generating the star, but you can only see it by looking at the render node. So this node here doesn't have image dimensions, it just has features to control the star, but it's being rendered here. And the advantage of this approach is now I can assemble lots of different elements here. I can, if I select the star and now add, let's say, a ellipse, for example, you see it's merged automatically like usual, but this time I have a node called sMerge, so I have the corresponding merge node from here, which is merging the shapes. So I'm not merging images, but shapes, and I can give this, let's say, a different color. Let's make it red, and I can further manipulate this. Let's say use an outline node to only get the outline of the shape, which again has its own features here. So this is how you can add and manipulate them. So each of these creator nodes, kind of, so the star, the n-gon, the rectangle, the ellipse. So these are the tools that are creating elements to start from, and then they have color information already. They can be animated, but then you can merge them together. You can manipulate them like with this outline node, or we can transform them, so they have their own transform here. And then the render node is the one which actually has the image resolution, which holds the image resolution. And from here onwards we have an RGB image which can be manipulated like usual. So, okay, I didn't really build anything that looks like a transition right now, but okay, so just so that we are doing something, let's say, okay, I'm building something really stupid here, so please don't use this for anything, but, you know, just for demo purposes. I have now a wonderful star, and I will just animate this transform. X, Y size, let me link them together. There's no button here to link them together. I don't know why they didn't do that, but anyhow, so now I have linked them together with a simple expression, and let me animate it. Now the traditional approach would be to just hit in keyframes, so I can make a keyframe at frame 0 and another keyframe at the end. The problem with that approach is that your keyframes are dependent on the frame numbers, right? So if you change the duration of your transition, then your keyframes will stay where they were before. if you want to save this as a macro, use it later in a different place, different duration, and so on, then your keyframes aren't really working. There were always workarounds for this, using expressions with mathematical expressions to get the beginning and the end of the clip, but that's a little bit complicated. That was also added in Resolve 16 in one of the last releases of 16. They added a modifier called Resolve Parameter. I can quickly show you if you haven't seen it so far. This has at the moment only one parameter, which is transition percentage, and there you get so the transition percentage goes from 0 to 1 for the beginning to the end of the transition. So this way you can drive the parameter here. It will now just go as per the percentage of the transition from 0 to 1, and you can scale it and you can further manipulate it. So this is a good thing, and together with a little bit of additional expressions and math, you could do quite a lot of things with this. But again, I mentioned the word math, so that's still not super customizable in an intuitive way for people who are not like very familiar with coding. So this is where the new stuff comes in, and let me remove this one and attach the new one instead. So if you connect, if you modify with this anim curves modifier, then you have a modifier which can work again on the transition, or for other fusion effects, if you're not building a transition, you can use the duration. So in that way, it has again the information beginning to end of the transition, and then you can say what kind of curve you want. So if it's linear, then we have again something that starts at 0 and goes to 5 in this case. So here's a scale. Let's say it should go to 1. So now it goes from 0 to 1, this parameter. So the parameter here now goes again from 0 to 1, same as I had just done before. But the advantage now is that you can use other functions here to drive this parameter. Linear you can do, easing, you can ease in and out. So it's basically still, right now it's still linear, so same as linear because there's none here, but you can, for example, select sine here, and this will just make a smooth curve in the beginning and at the end. So it will at the beginning come in a bit slower, go faster, and then slow down to the end again. So it starts slowly, fast, and then slows down. So this is the idea of this easing. But even better, you can do full custom transitions here. You can go to, sorry, I leave this on transition, but here I go to custom, and then you get curves control. And you get this here, or you can go to the spline editor and look at it here. And here I have a full animation curve. The only difference to a normal animation curve that I have anywhere else is, rather than having frames going from frame 0 to frame 39, instead I go from 0 to 1, and it will be mapped to whatever duration I have at the end. So this is really great. So here, let's say I want this star to be gone at the beginning and at the end. Let me move this down. You can also enter values here, by the way, same as before. And then in the middle, I want the star to appear, let's say like this. And maybe I want it smooth, so I press Shift S to smoothen it, or maybe F to flatten it, to flatten it to the baseline here. Sorry, I should probably make this a bit bigger here. But you can do any kind of curve, and let me put this exactly in the middle. And with any type of curve here, it will now adjust, and my star will appear towards the middle and then vanish again towards the end. So I think this is a really good addition for creating reusable assets for the edit page, reusable motion graphics and so on. This is, I really like this approach here. It's a small thing, but it's a really helpful addition to the modifiers here. I promised you a stupid transition, so let's just play with this a little bit more and complete this. So I can scale it overall, which just basically scales the maximum value, so it goes between 0 and 1 normally, and now let's scale it up to so that we are blocking the whole screen, so we have this wonderful star coming in and going out. Now let me switch the merge in this point just by using the blend value. So we want to merge from the old to the new picture. So I need to animate the blend. And let's use this one more time, modify with this curves modifier. And let's say in the middle where the star is here, we want to switch the blend value from 1 to 0 to just switch the two image sources. So let me go back to the modifiers, and this time let me use once again the custom transition, and let me invert this. So I start from a blend value of 1 and then go down to a blend value of 0, and not anywhere but at 0.5 I want to go down to 0, and at just before I will stick to 1, so I have kind of I built myself a step function, so 0.4999 whatever. So I just have in the center, I should now have a switch, and now I have my transition with the star to the new image, so wonderful transition. I can go back to the edit page. Here I have it on the edit page, and now I can copy this transition to any other place, for example like this, and maybe make it like super short, and still I have now with a different duration the transition directly applied. So you see, it's not necessarily about like a revolutionary new Fusion tool. It's more like these small little additions to the edit page and to the integration and to the way we can animate stuff, where one simple tool can really add a lot of simplicity of use and for creating such reusable assets. So I think that's really a good direction that we are taking here. Last thing for this long tutorial, there are more ResolveFX tools now available in Fusion, which can be helpful. Actually, there are much more now available in the edit page. So if I go to the effects library in the edit page, you see now, for example, certain keying tools here in the ResolveFX. For example, a 3D keyer and some AlphaMatte and Luma keyer, and the HSL keyer. Interestingly, editors now get these keyers, but Fusion artists don't. Now we have already a Luma keyer, we don't need this from ResolveFX. We have our matte control and so on, so maybe we don't need all of this. But for example, the HSL keyer, I wouldn't mind having it available in Fusion. You can do your own workaround, I've shown in the past, but would still be a nice little thing. But these are notably absent. But some tools were added, and if I go over to Fusion, the ones to point out that I think are really helpful, there are some like these motion trails and smear and so on, which add additional graphics. But if you are doing keying or even for many other types of work, it's really helpful that we now have the noise removal. So I'm just wondering about where it was here. Either way, you can, by the way, you can just search. All right, noise and OpenFX noise reduction, and this is the color page noise reduction. I was really hoping for this for a long time, and now we have it in Fusion directly, because in Fusion often I need to denoise a plate, especially before keying, but also for other VFX. Sometimes you need to denoise, then do your VFX, then add the noise again, things like that. So now I don't need to round trip to the color page or do any strange workarounds or rely on third-party software, but I can directly use the color space denoise tool, which is a very efficient tool from the color page. I can use the very same tool now in Fusion. So that's a really good thing. In addition, there's also here in the revival tool, we have the patch replacer, and this is also from the color page, so you may have seen it and used it in the color page before. It's a very simple clone tool. So let's say you want to clone out this light, you just position this over the area where you want something to be hidden, and place this anywhere from where you want to clone. And it's like a super simple clone tool. You can use the paint node, of course, but for some simple things, this can be very fast and save time. So that's a small little thing. Unfortunately, the AI-powered tools from the color page are still not available in Fusion. I was hoping for it, but it's still only reserved for colorists or for people who do some kind of round tripping via the color page. So there is this object removal in the color page, and there is now this Magic Matte tool, which is an AI-powered rotoscoping solution, which I'm not sure yet how accurate it is, and so far what I've seen, I don't think it will, do all your rotoscoping, but it could certainly be a valuable addition. That's certainly where I would see the future for rotoscoping. So hopefully someday it's going over to Fusion as well. Nonetheless, I am happy about the small editions we got, and I think over the last years, from 15 to 16, and then with the different updates in version 16, I think there was a lot of focus on getting Fusion stable. This is a major integration. It's still the only software which has such integration from Edit to Fusion to Color to Fairlight, and have this kind of capability at all. So getting this stable and usable for even people who don't have the highest performance workstations under their desk, I think that's was really the priority for Blackmagic Design, and I think that was the right priority. So I don't mind that the current improvements are more incremental rather than revolutionary. That's pretty much it. There are a few additional Resolve FX that I haven't mentioned now. There are some additional GPU accelerations and stability improvements that they mention in the release notes. Keep in mind, this is a beta version. Yes, I had a few crashes every now and then while playing around and testing, sometimes when media suddenly went offline, stuff like this. This is expected in an early beta release. So if you are in a production environment, maybe you want to wait a little bit. I think I will record my thoughts on this in a separate tutorial. Otherwise, some of the features may grow further in the future. For example, these shade nodes. Blackmagic Design mentions in the release notes that this is an initial set of shape nodes. So I think they are planning on developing this further and adding more. So it's just a first idea of this concept and some nodes to start with. And I think we might see more in this direction in the future. If you want me to do some more detailed tutorial on some specific features, let me know in the comments. Like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Feel free to check out my online training courses on my website, and see you again in another tutorial. Bye bye.